playing Sega Genesis with bros. Now I'm gaming with some folks on the other side of the globe. Used to go through a label if you trying to blow. Now people got more.
Welcome to 3 Count Commentaries. So today we're going to talk about performances versus works and how this relates to Kenny Omega. So a very thoughtful wrestling fan who does blogs. His name is Matt D. He goes by @MattD2A on Twitter. He posted his newest thoughts on Kenny Omega, and this got a lot of people's attention. And it seems that he was giving Kenny Omega some credit, but it wasn't nearly enough for the AEW fans. So we're going to go through this thing because I actually agree with some of it, though I don't agree with all of it. But I want to be able to read it all so that you'll get a full view of how he feels. So he says, quote, "Part of the appeal in writing these is to try to express criticism in good faith. It's hard to break through all the grifting and hurt feelings and tribalism and irrationality surrounding these figures, but they tend to be remarkable and worth talking about in the first place. It's just become very challenging to do." So he's letting you know right off rip, tribalism and favoritism and bias makes it hard to have these conversations. That's a good setup. I would like to know what he's talking about in the first paragraph, but we're getting there. He said, "The biggest challenge in me as a wrestling fan for the last decade and a half, is that I went from someone hyper-focused on logic and storytelling, on everything making sense, on being set up and paid off, on having consequence, to being a bit more focused on immersion, the suspension of disbelief, living in the moment, not seeing the strings." Okay, so I don't see these two things as being things that contradict one another. Logic and storytelling can buy in, but you're not supposed to see the strings. And if the story is logical and if everything makes sense and the story makes sense, you're not going to see the strings, really. Not much, anyway. Obviously, as a wrestling fan, you know the strings are there. So he continues by saying, "I honestly believe that Kenny Omega is a very thoughtful, meticulous wrestler. He balances that with incredible athleticism and precise execution. I respect what he's able to accomplish. More than that, I think the me of 15 years ago would have actively sought out his work, and the me of 30 years ago would have counted him among my absolute favorites." So he's trying to give you the spoonful of sugar on this medicine, right? This is the tussin you're about to take. But you got to give you that spoonful of sugar because he's trying to placate the bias, the favoritism, the elite fans. He wants those guys. Those are the kind of guys who read this stuff anyway, right? So he says, "The me of today struggles. On some level, the entirety of the elite rode a wave of deconstruction, and specifically of tearing down the walls that separated wrestler from audience. For the Bucks, there is an additional level of cynicism there, a way of being an avatar for the audience to feel superior to everything that had come before, of feeding upon the natural sense of shame about their hobby that wrestling fans have and pushing them to turn their nose up and feel above all of the old traditional trappings." This is very good because the Young Bucks have been running around for 5 years now talking about how they're killing the business. They didn't even name their book "Killing the Business," you know, mocking the idea that they do too much. Meltzer has aided in this tremendously by giving them very highly rated matches. And of course, this leads to all the cage match dwarves going and searching, the cage match trolls, them going around, giving them high ratings on their matches. So now these people think that this is what pro wrestling is supposed to be. All right. And he's going to very well explain what the problem is. He says, "With Omega, it feels like it comes from a more genuine place, tapping into the freedom that can be gained by dropping the facade and admitting to the crowd that yes, it is fake. It is a performance. It is a staged form of athletic acting. If you are no longer worried about working the crowd, you can turn up the volume in how you wow them. It changes the social contract between audience member and wrestler. It's no longer about moving their hearts and minds, but instead about providing them with the best performance, the best show, and in this case, yes, the best bouts, and being transparent about it. It's about amassing star ratings by distilling down those elements that had traditionally earned such things and creating matches with maximized those elements even while downplaying others. On some level, Shawn Michaels had done something similar, shifting the metric of success in the fans' eyes to having the best match on the card. But in the age of social media, Omega takes it further. So, what he's saying here is that there is an unspoken agreement between the wrestler and the audience, what he refers to as a social contract. And the wrestler is supposed to make you feel. The wrestler is supposed to make you feel like he's in danger. The wrestler is supposed to make you feel like he's angry. You're supposed to feel embarrassed if the wrestler is embarrassed. You're supposed to feel humiliated if the wrestler is humiliated. It was the wrestler's job to get you to feel something, to take you on that roller coaster. What he's saying is that the guys like the Young Bucks and the Kenny Omegas, they don't seek to do that. What they seek to do is to tell you that it's fake and just enjoy the show. I'm going to do some moves. You just clap when I do the moves. I'm going to do stuff. You clap. Whether you feel anything from it or not is irrelevant. And I disagree with Shawn Michaels being in here because Shawn Michaels in his early part of his career, maybe he was kind of a spot monkey, trying to wow people with how he could move and his agility and stuff like that. Of course, in his later years, when the athleticism died down a bit, he definitely tapped into the sympathy, how to sell, how to fire up. He got so much better at those things when he got older. But the Young Bucks hasn't. They're older now, and they're still trying to do all of the same stuff that they used to do. And they don't tap into the emotional element, which is the element everybody cares about when it comes to pro wrestling. And Kenny Omega, he doesn't really either. So this is what he's telling you. And I saw this and I was like, aha, I see where he's going. I see where he's going. And he says, quote, he created a new, different compact with the audience. Instead of attempting to work them, he held out his hand to work with them. Instead of creating emotional drama that played upon the suspension of disbelief, he made sure at every moment to show the audience how the trick was done, to make sure the strings could be seen clearly, so that they could be brought into the circle and feel like they were part of the show. By removing the traditional distance, they could focus on the pure excitement and sensation of what they were witnessing. They could feel like experts and be proud that they were witnessing wrestling history. This is no small or easy task. As I watch his matches, I note an amazing attention to detail, down to specific camera angles and framing. If he wasn't so skilled and thoughtful, the entire tower would collapse under its own weight. Part of the biggest issue is that it often does with those who were inspired by him. He's saying that Kenny Omega sort of created this way of performing where it's so choreographed. Like he talks about it being meticulous. He uses euphemisms, like he's using meticulous as one of the words, and has an amazing attention to detail. What he's saying is that the matches are choreographed. It's so choreographed that Kenny Omega knows where the cameras are going to be and how the camera is going to shoot this spot that he's going to do. But other people who are also choreographing their matches, they don't pay attention to details the same way Omega does. That's what he's saying. So he's trying to be nice. I'm just giving it to you straight raw. Everybody knows that Kenny Omega everybody's matches are scripted. Everybody rehearses their matches. But now we're talking about, this is a comparison to like somebody like Randy Savage. who had bullet points or whatever that he wanted guys to hit throughout the match. But this is getting to the point where Kenny Omega is actually able to direct the action to a degree. And he sacrifices emotion, because emotion is something that happens during the match. He's going to go through his performance. Just like a rock star is not going to take requests from the audience. He's going to play the set that he began to play, that he rehearsed earlier. There's not going to be any extras. You know, some people can do that. Some people can just on the fly, let's play an album cut that I didn't rehearse. Some people, if I didn't rehearse it, I ain't playing it. And this is a difference between wrestling, the performance, and being a worker. When you're a worker, you're playing off the audience. You're getting the audience to feel something. You want the audience to emote. You're dragging them on, and it's not exactly that choreographed. Certain parts of the match may be, because you do want to hit certain elements. You do want to hit certain notes. But you want the crowd to be immersed in the story. You want them to follow everything that you're doing. You don't just want to do moves in front of them and then they clap like seals. And they feel like, wow, you're just such amazing wrestling artist because you did your 500th tope suicida or whatever. But it's changing. And I didn't quite see this angle when I first read it, but I understand it a little bit more. So he continues by saying, that said, it couldn't be further from what I want from wrestling. It's inclusive, progressive, collaborative, even caring. But it jettisons all those artfully manipulative and cunning emotional hooks that had moved hearts and minds for decades. Even when he's portraying hatred or an emotional storyline, he wears the fact that it's a performance on his sleeve. He invites the audience to transparently understand his methods and is rewarded by chants of "this is awesome" or "fight forever." Now he's being very soft. He's attacking the Kenny Omega-tization of pro wrestling, but he's doing it with very kid gloves. He talks about how it's inclusive and progressive and collaborative. Oh, Kenny Omega's methods is caring. Who cares about any of this garbage? Right? Why is he using these words? Well, because he's trying to soften the criticism for the tribalists, for the people who think Kenny Omega is the greatest of all time, who are going to be the people who are going to read this, who attacked him vociferously online for this. And he was attacked a lot by this. But this is why he's using these very soft words. Saying that the match is collaborative. He's bringing the fans in. Well, I guess. So then he continues by saying, the wall that existed for a reason, however. There were opportunities inherent in it. It was never about believing it was real, of course. It was about caring about outcomes and consequences. About the notion of a best bout being a means to some sort of dramatic and emotional resolution, and not the end unto itself. It was about getting heat and building to a point of glorious comeback. Did you catch it? Did you catch what he's saying? He's saying that these guys don't make you care about the outcome of the match. You're supposed to be just happy with the match itself. That's it. The match itself is the sell, not how you feel about the match. This is very ironic, considering, Jey Uso, who everybody has said is a terrible wrestler. Oh, he's awful. He had the worst match at WrestleMania 40 with Jimmy. He wins the Intercontinental Championship from Braun Breaker. And the room erupts. It's doing numbers on social media, on YouTube and everything, because of the way that the match was put together and the fact that they really did a good job of drawing you in to the story of the match, of drawing you into, high emotional resonance with Jey Uso, with the stories that they've told with him up to this point, that the performer himself does not need to be that great in the ring. If you care about him, you will overlook that part. And this is the important bit, is that a lot of these guys today are incredible athletes. They're more athletic than any set of professional wrestlers ever, but they've never meant less. They can do more flips. They're more durable to a degree. They're more flexible. They're more agile, but they're less complex. They're less believable. And they have to take themselves, and this goes into the Swerve Strickland, Hangman Page element, right? These guys have to fall on real concrete and really stab each other in the mouth to get you to care or to get you to cringe, when that's never needed before. Nobody has ever needed to really do some damage to you to get you to buy into the story at this point. But because AEW has such a flashy style, everybody needs to see something legitimate in order to really have strong emotional resonance in the story. That's why the big reactions that you got from the All Out show, where, the plastic bag over the head and the needle through the mouth, because those things were shocking. And there was no way to fake that. There was no way to fake Swerve or Hangman really falling on a real concrete block. So that's what got everybody like, ooh, but that's not working. That's a shoot. The work is for it to not be a real concrete block, but for everybody to think that it is, to at least in the moment feel that it is. If it really is, then how is that a work? It's not. What's the magic in that? There isn't any. What is the magic in stabbing somebody in the mouth for real? There is none. So did you work yourself into a shoot? Have you worked a style to the point where that's the only way you can get that emotional resonance? Did you literally have to go that far? Well, it's clearly something's wrong, right? But back in the day, guys used to get over by doing half as much. This is why, Randy Orton is considered, even by some of his elders, as being a great wrestler. And then you listen to a lot of the AEW fans, they start talking about, well, we're going to teach Javon Evans in this upcoming match how to work a chin lock. Because that, in their minds, that's what the match is. The match is, what moves are you going to do? Are you going to do some new moves? How many flips are you going to break out? When the perception of people who know about work is that your stuff looks believable. Your stuff is crisp. You're not killing each other. It looks good. It looks believable. But that's not what interests them anymore. What interests them, and a lot of it is because these guys are Kenny Omega fans, are the moves. What moves is this guy going to do? I don't like him. He only has 3 moves. That's very weird. So let's get back to this article. This is going longer than I thought. He says, watching a Kenny Omega match is like going to a magic show where the magician goes out of his way to show you how it's done so you can feel like you're included. It's like watching a TV show where the actor is constantly winking at you, but with you. Not at you, but with you, I'm sorry. In both cases, there can be incredible amounts of skill and thought and care put into the act. But in neither case do you end up genuinely moved to the level that you might be otherwise. In other words, he's talking about breaking the fourth wall. Acknowledging that the show is a show. Acknowledging that stuff is not real. And just saying, play along. This is what Fight Forever, or this is awesome, and all that. This is just play along, right? So you, as a member of the audience, you play along. So he continues, those wrestlers I am most drawn to are the ones who are always on, always in the moment, always blurring the lines, always squeezing the most emotional weight out of every possibility to act and react. You don't want to take your eye off them because you might miss something unexpected and unforgettable. You feel the struggle they are presenting from your mind to your heart and into your very bones as you watch. With Omega, for me at least, every single piece is perfectly placed and brilliantly executed, but none of it actually moves me. This was very well written. And it was bloated, because you can say the same thing in a tweet, right? You can say, look, Kenny Omega is a great performer, but he's not a great worker, and I don't really feel anything when I watch his matches. Because that's what I would say. And it literally takes you 15 seconds to say that. Like it literally, and I feel this way. I've seen Kenny Omega matches and I've said that they were great, but I've never gone back and watched any of them more than once. And for the record, a lot of people are going to listen to this. I've seen all the matches with Okada. I've seen the stuff when he was a junior heavyweight. I've even seen some of the tag team stuff with him and Kota Ibushi. I've watched every match he's had in AEW. I'm familiar with the work of Kenny Omega, and I completely stand on the fact that Kenny Omega has never worked a match I needed to watch more than once. And it's that simple. His match with Danielson was probably the closest to me needing to watch a match more than once. And that was mostly because of Danielson. I have never needed to watch a Kenny Omega match twice, because I don't feel like I would get anything out of watching it again. And the matches are so long that he's almost demanding that you go along for this ride, where basically you're just watching explosions for 40 minutes. I mean, that's nice. And I remember I sat down and I watched a movie once. I think it was X versus Sever. And it was like one of those movies that was trying to be like The Matrix and all that. It was just explosions for like an hour and a half. And I remember like, what is this movie even about? Like, it's nice to have like movies with cool fight scenes or whatever. But then ultimately you're like, what is this movie about again? Like, it's a completely different thing, like from like a Tony Jaa movie, like The Protector. That movie still had emotional weight, even though it was a kung fu fight movie. And the story is simple in The Protector. I don't know if you guys have seen it. If you haven't, I suggest it. It's a very old movie. It's like a 20-year-old movie. But it's a kung fu movie, and wrestling is action-based. So there should be a great deal of action in pro wrestling. The problem is there should also be a great deal of emotion in pro wrestling, because that's what keeps people coming. The question of what's wrong with AEW is almost never answered. And, Alvarez and Mike Sempervive, they did this whole thing about, when did AEW start to decline? It's like, well, when you have guys doing superhero matches where they're jumping over the top rope, falling on their hip and destroying their bodies, and nothing ever seems to end, and there's no emotional weight to the match, and there's no emotional weight to who wins or who loses. When, nothing seems to matter, then people walk away. What is all of this for? What are we doing all of this for? The point of wrestling is to continue to draw money. What are you doing this for? To draw money. What draws money? Drama. Action supports the drama. Action will always support the drama, but the drama needs to be there. That way the action has punch. I give you one scene from a movie. Was it Godfather 2? When Michael smacked his wife? Also, all I need to say is, you remember when Michael smacked his wife in Godfather 2? You probably put yourself in that scene immediately. The whole setup. Michael is stressed out. His wife wants out of the life. Then she tells Michael she had an abortion. And she starts going on about she doesn't want to be a part of this Sicilian thing, and he snaps and he smacks her. The action is there. They built up the argument. It started slow. She was timid at first, and then she found her voice as the match was going on. Notice I said match. And they started going on and up and up and up, and then it punctuated by him smacking her. And him telling her, "You'll never take my children away from me." That's how you put together a story. Just a simple story within a story. It's a story within the overall story of Godfather 2. That's what a wrestling match should be. All the promos, the video packages, all the previous matches, all that stuff leads up to the match itself. And it may even lead to something within the match. But it should still feel spontaneous. It should still feel like when this happens, it hits emotionally. Not just, ooh, I can't believe that happened. Wow, what an explosion. You should feel something. Maybe it should change your opinion of one of the characters. Maybe it takes somebody and puts them on the next level. Maybe it takes somebody and it drags them down even more. And in that scene specifically, you might feel a little conflicted. You might be like, well, I'd have smacked my wife too if she'd had an abortion. Or you may feel that no matter what happens, you never put your hands on your wife. Or you may even sympathize with Michael a little bit and say, you know what? This was just a bad time. You know, she came to him at this point in time when all this stuff's going on and he snapped. But that's really what a good movie is supposed to do. It puts you in the seat of the characters and you're trying to work out the characters' motivations and the thoughts and the feelings in that moment. That's what a wrestling match is supposed to do. The wrestler is supposed to go out there and put you in their current circumstance and lead you to believe that they're in danger, or that they're really about to kick this guy's ass, or that chair really fucking hurt. Oh, you know, that's the craft. And we're losing recipes, as they say. So word up to Matt D2A for the pretty good write-up. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comment section below. I will talk to you guys later.